Welcome to another edition of the Empower Hour. I am Alqamar.
And I am Hanifah.
And we do this each and every Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. We come to you with impactful topics of discussion that affect our everyday lives. And of course, as you know, every week. This week will be no different. In the studio, we have with us a super duper special guest, Miss Tyra Lane-Kingsland.
Welcome.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you.
We have been dying to get you on the program, so it's been a while coming.
Yes.
So finally, you had some space in your schedule
Yes.
to come and share with us. So thank you so much for joining us at
And
the
thank
table.
you all for having me.
Appreciate it. So today's topic of discussion is going to be raising whole children in today's society. And we thought Tyra was, we couldn't find a better person to tackle this subject matter with us because she is the author of Purposeful Parenting. And if you guys are unfamiliar with her work, definitely run out and grab her book. I really enjoyed this
Thank
book.
you.
I got a lot out of it. So yeah, so Purposeful Parenting and raising whole children in today's society. Can you just share with the audience why we think you are a good candidate for this discussion? A little bit about you.
Okay. So what brings us to this subject, what brings us to this book? Experience, life experience, born out of my own experience. So I had a pretty tumultuous childhood, right? And we know that the things that happen to us in childhood shape who we are as we grow into our adulthood.
No doubt.
So in my adulthood, I began to see, these vestiges of my childhood coming out in ways that I didn't anticipate. Then when I became a parent, I saw that sometimes my reaction to things, my response to things was not in line with what my children were doing. And as a result, I had to do a lot of self-examination to say, why do you believe these things? Where did these beliefs come from? Why are you responding the way that you do? And in the process, I have since had 6 children along the journey. I've also had an opportunity to raise my sister in her teen years through her early adulthood because my mother was an addict. And so through that, and also being the director of a mom's group for over 8 years now. So all of those experiences have been encapsulated in this book right here. And what has happened is I've done a lot of self-reflecting, and that's what really comes out in the book. And I hope that's why the book resonated with you and with other readers, is it's not just this like strategies to get your kid right. The heart of the book is all about examining our own hearts so that we can give children the love they need and deserve.
Yeah, and I noticed you did a whole lot of that, sharing your own personal stories in the book. What was it that made you decide to write this book?
Ooh, I didn't want to write this book. In my other life, in my real life, in my life that I want to live, I talk about health and wellness. I teach women holistic health. And so I was in the middle of writing this book on how we achieve optimal health through proper nourishment, rest, and exercise. I was real excited about that work. That work was real fun to me. But this work was something I had packed away. I had taught an 8-week class at my church on raising children. That class ended. I packed that material away, right? That was like gone. I was on to work on other things. But this would never stay silent. It kept coming up, and it kept coming up, and it kept coming up. And so I had to honor God and heed the word to go ahead and bring this out because people needed to hear it.
Yeah, no doubt. Because I was flipping through the pages, and I'm one who think, oh, okay, I've heard it all, seen it all, But I'm reading, and I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I can use this. So all throughout, it was really tangible information that we look over throughout our lives thinking that, oh, I've had 2 children. I know what to do. But some twists in the way you take tangible information and just make it so simplistic.
Right.
I admire that about the book. And again, family, that's Purposeful Parenting, allowing God to change your heart so he can reach theirs.
Yes.
And I noticed too that it was Christian based.
Yes, it is a faith based It is a faith-based work because my faith is what compels me, what propels me, what gives me the fuel, you know, to really, really go about doing this. But I will say, too, that I think this work speaks to people of any faith. I think that this work speaks not only to parents, too, but mentors, coaches, grandparents, because we all have a responsibility to deposit into the children in our circle of influence. And so this work right here, in addition to being my story, is really the collective voice of people who are not necessarily saying the real deal. How you deal with a child when you don't like how they acted. You know what I mean? It's the real voice, and I think that's what resonates. Now, in my natural countenance, I'm very clinical. So when I was writing this, I thought it was going to be like, you know, see what the experts say. I thought it was going to be a very clinical discourse on, you know, how we raise children. Just do this.
Right, structured.
I'm very linear. I'm very structured. I'm very A through Z. And can I say it, having 6 kids will rip you right out of that? Okay.
With the quickness.
Yeah. And so I knew that this work could not follow that same course of action. And God told me that too. He said, you know what? People have access to that kind of information. People have access to what the experts say. That information is not hard to come by.
True.
So what's going to help liberate people? Access to information or hearing from the heart.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, here we go. Now I got to tell my business. Well, I don't want to tell my business.
You know, it's interesting because, and I have a question, but it's interesting you just said that, because this morning when I woke up, I just kept hearing it's those places that we may be ashamed of, or we consider dark. You know, those parts of ourselves that we want to suppress and hide somewhere, that is where the healing begins. And that just was playing over and over in my head. I didn't even know we was going to be having this particular part of this conversation. But you mentioned that you feel the book is absolutely necessary, that people need it. So when you say that, what has been your observation as far as some of the struggles that people are experiencing in parenting?
A lot of shame. In the world perpetuates this shame.
Yes.
In showing these edited, Instagram-worthy scenarios of parenting, whether it's TV commercials, whether it is movies. It's a very glamorized view of parenting. We have a lot of voices in our ear, whether it's our family members, whether it's the community, whether it's teachers in the classroom, that chime in on our parenting. And that just adds to the shame. And so even from the time before women get pregnant, you know, there's this shame. When are you going to have a baby? How come you're not pregnant yet? Then you have a baby. Well, are you going to have, you know, you had a boy, now are you going to have a girl? Then you keep having kids. Well, how many kids are you going to have? You going to keep having babies? I have 6 kids. I mean, you know, it was like always you're hearing, oh, you're pregnant again. You know, so then there's all this shame attached to parenting. Well, this helps to shed a little bit of light to say these experiences are common. They are common to the experience. Our children are not perfect. For all of our parenting efforts, our children are their own persons, and they're going to walk out their experience the way they do. And it is not always Instagram photo feed worthy.
That's real.
Yeah, you know, and as you mentioned Instagram, even YouTube. Like there are some families that I had to stop following on YouTube because this is really like cut and paste videos. Like we're gonna cut this part out. So when you watch, by the time you watch 20 minutes of their family, like it looks so perfect, and I'm like, that's not real. That's not what I need. That's not even what we need. You know what I mean? But they have like millions of followers. You know, because it's I almost feels like we demand that as an escape.
Yeah.
We do.
From our own reality. But I feel like, like you said, when you put that out there, people are flocked to that too, because it's like we're looking for the real as well. You know what I mean? So one of the things that I would say the steps of parenting, you say it starts even before we get pregnant. The shame, just the attacks, the gossip around, or what your expectations are as a mother. You talked about kids' journey. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like your kids being their own individual, having their own journey, and why is it so difficult for us as I'm going to say as mothers to accept that and to cultivate it?
Right. Well, I find that what happens is we place an expectation on what this child's experience will look like. We all want our children to succeed. Yeah. So perhaps along the way we've bought into some of the stories, some of the fairy tale on what success ought to look like. So then we feel it is our job as mothers to manufacture that experience and that end product, right? Because then this person is an extension of you. So I'm going to manipulate some parents the outcome. Yes. I am going to custom craft the outcome. And that does not honor the fact that every child is going to have their own experience.
Give us an example.
I'm going to give you an example.
Okay.
So I have 6 children, all raised under the tutelage of my husband and myself in our community. Same set of values, right? Same set of morals, same set of expectations. One child receives this information a certain way, lives it out. Another child can go the complete opposite direction. Said school teacher can have both children in the classroom, right? And they're looking for the child to behave a certain way based on what they know even when they see this last name coming. But said second child, little off the hook. Okay, I got one of them in the crew. I got one of them out of the 6. I love him. And he's so fun because to my concrete, linear, orderly self, he's just random and fun, right? He's just that dude. He's so fun. He's so funny. Borderline class clown. Okay, so it's a different thing, but they were under the same values, under the same morals, yet are living their own experience because they are wired a certain way. Yeah. Now, am I as a parent going to continue to force my agenda, to continue to enforce my regime, or am I going to give that child space to be themselves? So, for example, I have an artist in the house too. Now, until a couple of years ago, I didn't really necessarily see the value of art, right? Because I have been schooled by the world system, you know, doctor, lawyer. My grandfather's Jamaican, so you know in the West Indies, right? Like, look, this
is what success looks like.
This is what success looks like. So, you know, these kind of mainstream corporate jobs, career, art, what? A couple of years ago, though. But I've come to see this is how this child's been wired from the beginning. Am I going to come into alignment with who she is and create opportunities for her to explore that? Or am I going to try to shut that down? My firstborn in the math and science. So she says she wants to be a pathologist. Those people study what happens to the dead after. And so when she was a little girl, if she would find like skeletons outside, skulls, bones. I thought it was gross. I thought it was borderline kind of like
crazy.
Yeah, you okay? I didn't want to say it, but like you weird. Who play with that animal? Yeah. We don't do that.
Yep.
Like come on, we having real talk, right? Because now I'm putting my business out on the street, so I need y'all to be my amen corner. So I didn't understand that, right? But I had read this book by Dr. Keith Black, who is the chief brain surgeon at Cedars-Sinai. And in this book, Keith Black talks about his parents and how his parents, when they had discovered him like dissecting little animals at home. So he would find little animals and bring them in the house and dissect them. So his mom said, I'm going to go to the butcher and I'm going to buy you a chicken heart so you could dissect it. And then I'm going to buy you a cow brain so you could dissect it. And this man now is operating on brains. He was Johnny Cochran's doctor when Johnny Cochran was diagnosed with brain cancer.
So he had parents who got it.
He had parents who got it. So I'm glad I read that book too early in my experience so that I could see, okay, here you have an opportunity, Tyra, to help cultivate how this person was made, not your manufacturing, but helping to unveil who they are.
Beautiful story. Now I'm one of those parents. I have 2 children. My son is the oldest. I had him when I was 17.
Okay.
So I like to tell the story. Well, I don't like to tell it, but I tell the story that he and I grew up together. Really, that's real. And I made a lot of what you would consider mistakes in raising him. And I look back at some of the things that I did and like, gosh, if only I knew better. You know, things would be different. So how do you like talk to somebody like me who's probably in the mid? Well, he's an adult now, but maybe right in the middle of raising their children, and they hear you, and they've been doing it completely opposite of what you're talking about. What advice would you give somebody moving forward in raising their children? Some little things that they could possibly do differently for a different outcome.
Well, it starts with today on telling yourself that what you knew then was the best you could do then.
That's real.
We cannot hold ourselves hostage, captive to who we were yesterday. Yesterday we operated on yesterday's information, yesterday's knowledge, yesterday's experience. So I would venture to say your 17, 18, 20-year-old self did the best you could with what you knew at that time. So now, can your 35-year-old self hold you hostage to a decision your 18-year-old self made? That wouldn't be fair to you. So the first thing I would say is there's no condemnation. There's no condemning you for decisions that you made then. I would venture to say you did the best you had with the resources that you had available. And then what can we do today? Okay, so forgiving yourself, loving yourself, not condemning yourself. That's step number 1. And then from there, love yourself. Give yourself grace to say, you know what? It's okay. It's okay. I'm entitled to live my experience, to make mistakes, because mistakes are part of the journey. You know, we've been taught to view that mistakes are a bad thing, that setbacks are a bad thing, that failures are a bad thing. But I read this article by the maker of the Dyson vacuum. And before the Dyson vacuum actually came to market as we know it, he had over 1,000 prototypes. So those 1,000 prototypes are what people would consider a mistake, a failure, an error. But they were learning opportunities to then produce a final outcome that people are willing to pay over $500 for a Dyson vacuum, okay? And their brand loyalty is like, I mean, their customers are like all in. But what did it take to get to that point? 1,000 errors. So in our parenting journey, what one would view as an error can just be seen as a learning opportunity, as an opportunity for growth. Then we may need to go back and ask forgiveness, you know, for the parties that were involved, to our children, to say, you know what, at that stage, I did the absolute best that I could. But know that my love for you is my love for you, and we have an opportunity today to touch and agree and to move forward on this journey together. So no condemnation, and you know, you just take it from today. What can we do about yesterday? I'm not living in yesterday.
Well, Tyra, what happens? Talk to us about what happens when someone does not do all the steps that you just mentioned, but yet they continue to parent. Tell us what that looks like and why that can be problematic. In other words, they're looking at the older child who's, like you said, you have an older son who's 20-something, and maybe you're still raising a 13-year-old, you know, and so you recognize, I did my best, but I also see where, you know, I could have done better. But yet, because you haven't forgiven yourself, now that pressure is placed on that 13-year-old. Why is that problematic? Why isn't it right? Like, you don't want to make the same mistakes, so now you're like on top of this 13-year-old. What is so problematic about that?
Exactly. So then we're projecting onto the next person the prior person's experience. And this can also happen even when it's not like an age thing like that. That can happen in a home with multiple children, where you're even parenting one personality, you know, you have these different personalities and you're parenting to one personality or to one experience. And that doesn't give that individual child an opportunity. But what's happening there is we're parenting out of love or fear. There are only 2 places. Everything we do, every decision we make is rooted in love or fear. And I think you ladies may have touched on that when you all did your broadcast on toxic parenting, on toxic mothering, by the way. It was a real good show.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So every decision rooted in love or fear. So then we can, with that 13-year-old, because of the fears of what we did with the older one, be parenting from that place. And it does not end well.
And it's unfair.
And it's unfair. It's unfair to yourself and unfair to the child. And it's just toxic.
I see that.
Let's talk about the world, okay? Because we have, certain expectations and things in the household. But then when they get outside of them doors, it's a whole nother world. So I was just reading some stuff the other day about bullying. And how bullying is on the uptick, suicide rate amongst teens is on the uptick because of bullying. What's your take on that? Why do you see that happening more and more? What's your take on that?
Well, let me go back for a minute, because in my own experience, and if we think about our experiences as children, we knew a bully or we were the bully. Okay, so bullying is not a new phenomenon.
Yes, right.
I think what has happened is because there's a platform to talk about it, because there are additional means for children to act it out, then it's becoming more prevalent. So bullying has always been around. I know my childhood bully, okay? I can name her to this day. I can think about how I ran to try to not fight her, and my mother was the type of mother that I was like, you gonna go fight her. Talk about toxic, but that's a show for another day, okay? This is why we here, to help undo some of my experience, right?
Mine too.
Okay. So, but if your childhood bully was at your school, say for example, you would only have to kind of deal with that in the context of school. Whereas today your bully can follow you. Your bully can follow you on social media. So there are just additional entry points and touch points for it to happen. Why I think there's some of the uptick that we see it today. What I also see is some stuff that we used to just call picking on, is now kind of labeled bullying. Like everything can fall under the bully umbrella, when some of this we just see as a part of the regular child development experience.
So the childhood initiation.
Unfortunately.
Yes, it's true.
Unfortunately. And to some degree, again, as parents, we want to shield them from every eventuality.
Glad you said
when that's not necessarily the right answer either.
Glad you said that.
I can recall times in my own parenting, say one of my children didn't get invited to the party. And this whole crew over here, this clique was together, they got invited to the party, and then my daughter didn't. Now I want to come in flying in helicopter mom to protect her. But you know what, in real life, you're not going to get invited to the party. In real life, as grown-ups, we still deal with cliques and issues like that. So some of these things in parenting that we think we want to protect them from, here again, we could be operating out of love or fear. So they do need to experience some of life. So no, I'm not an advocate for bullying, but I am saying that we don't need to shelter our children from every real life encounter that might sting, that might hurt, because life is going to give it to them. But if it can happen under the context of your covering, your umbrella, and your love, then you can walk them through that process.
That's a very good point. I'm so glad you said it, because I'm in agreement with that. I think here, and I'm wondering if that has anything to do with this whole rise in bullying cases too, or suicide rates and things like that, because I'm like, well, when we were young, like you said, we had it all the time. But now it seems like it's such a, oh no, scenario, or the children are being so sheltered that they're not able to even feel those things that may be uncomfortable for them. And we want to shield them from everything. We want to shield them from bacteria. So, every 2 seconds, it's like hand gel. And you got your newborn and you won't let nobody breathe on them. You won't let nobody touch them. And then when they're on the playground, parents are literally, I watch this, chasing behind the child as they're going on the slide, and they won't even let them go down the slide and go. And what I find too is, I think that more attention should be put on those who do a lot of the physical damage to other people. You know, the bullies
The
that like to
bullying.
beat up and stuff. You know, we want to shelter the ones that are being bullying, but we really should be focusing more on the one that's doing the bullying.
Right.
Because I think they need more help
Right.
than anybody else, you know, because something's going on there
Right.
that needs attention.
Exactly. You're so right.
Yeah.
Some degree of brokenness, right?
Yeah.
Because we see them operating out of that. And is anyone drilling it down?
Right.
To
Who's
help
helping
find
that
solutions?
child?
Right. Oh, well, you know, that child's getting sent to the principal's office,
Suspended.
kicked out of class, suspended, bullied by someone else, and then it just creates a chain.
I agree. Yeah.
Can you speak to the parents who may have, okay, can you speak to the parents who, when they were growing up, they were a good child, and now they have a child that's like the opposite of them, and maybe they constantly resort to saying things like, my mom didn't have to send me to the babysitter. I came in and I did what I was supposed to do. Or just constantly telling the child that, but the child, and not accepting the fact that, but that child isn't you.
Right.
Can you speak to those parents who have a hard time? It's like, I grew up this way, we come from a good family, but this child that they have now is challenging
Yes.
their whole moral system that their family have upheld. Speak to those parents. How should they handle that? People say the black sheep of the family, the black sheep of the family. How does a parent handle that type of child? When you're maybe looking at the cousins and everybody else, they're just good. When they go to the party, they sit nice, they don't get their clothes dirty. But you have that one child, and how does that parent go from seeing that child as an embarrassment to seeing them as an individual?
So two-part. We're going to answer this in two-part. The first part, we're going to deal with the issue of even using the word good, right? So we do that. We separate. We polarize. You know, these behaviors we categorize are good.
Yes.
And these behaviors are bad. Well, what does it mean to be good?
Right.
Just because I sit quietly and I'm compliant, does that make me good?
Right.
Because my heart can still be rebellious. Or I could be good because I'm a people pleaser. And then I spend all my life as a child being good, being a people pleaser. And then I grow up to be an adult who gets walked on, who gets stepped on, who gets abused silently because I was good when really I was just compliant.
Absolutely.
So it even begins with some of the languaging that we use around
define.
that, and how and how we define good. So I talked earlier about my one who's borderline class clown. Well, some may label him as bad, but you know what? The boy is brilliant. He's a brilliant mind. He's a brilliant thinker. His mind is always going. So when he's finished with his schoolwork, if he has nothing to do, he will turn bad, right? But
Bored,
he's just
when they're
as
bored.
good as anyone else. So I think the first piece is, you know, kind of reassessing what we categorize as good and bad, and to view each person's skills, abilities, and their natural inclination, their natural proclivities, and value that.
Yeah.
You know, and not just good as compliant and quiet. And because we've been taught, I think we're at a generation where, you know, children, the people who raised us, you're seen and not heard.
Yes.
You're seen. And so, and I don't want to hear you, and I'm going to see you, and you're going to sit quiet.
Especially in public.
In public, you're not going to speak out, you're not going to embarrass me, you're not going to be in grown folks' business. You know, all this other stuff that we heard and seen as our experience growing up. Well, I venture to say today that while children should respect authority, we do need to reassess and rethink what is good and bad. Now, how does the parent deal then with a child who is different?
Yes.
Right? We should celebrate it. There is a chapter in my book that talks about acceptance. And it was one of the hardest pieces for me to write, is accepting people who are different than I am. And that is just basic human nature.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's not easy to do.
It's a challenge.
It's not,
Yes.
it's not easy to accept people who are different. But in those differences, there's beauty. I mean, it's what makes the fiber of life so
Absolutely.
great, because there's different. We have different colors. our taste buds pick up on different things. You know, it's all of those things that make life colorful and beautiful. If we were all static in the same, life would be boring. Life would be boring. It would be dead. It would be dead. So we celebrate differences. We recognize differences. We celebrate differences. Now, if there are some just behaviors that are outright ridiculous and unacceptable, we address those in the context, bringing it back to what our values are, what our morals are. Because again, we're training children to be adults, to be productive citizens of the world. And not only are we asking them to operate in the confines of what we're saying, we're trying to teach them that there's a world system that they operate in too, you know? And so understanding to follow the rules at home is going to help you know to understand the law. Because guess what? When you get behind that vehicle, you got to have a driver's license to operate it. You got to follow the rules of the land, or you're going to get your license revoked. You're going to go to jail. You know, there will be consequences. So understanding that we're raising adults and we bring them back to whatever the value base is. But some people are going to go to the left and to the right. I did at times too. Self-included. And I think as parents, sometimes we can forget that. We can forget, yeah, you made a mistake.
Right.
Yeah, you were hard-headed.
Right.
Yeah, you went your own way. Yeah, when you were a teenager, you thought you knew everything. You thought you knew more than your parents. You know, I think we forget and disconnect.
Yeah.
And we should have a little bit more empathy for where children are in their individual phases.
Good stuff. I know I looked up the definition of the word bad one day, and I read it, and I told myself I'd never use that word again to describe children. Because if anybody, look that word up, family, look the word up and all the terminologies that come along with that word. Our children are not bad. Right. Period.
So with parenting, you talk about, and I say that all the time. We parent either from fear or love.
Yes.
But majority of us parent from a place of fear for whatever reason. What are we so afraid of as parents from your experience? And you've been doing this for 8 years, and you know you've talked to, I'm sure, a ton of parents. What is it that we're so afraid of? Why is it so scary if our children choose a different path than we had envisioned for them? Why is that so scary for us?
Because it's a reflection on us, and we'll feel like we're failures. It's a direct reflection on us. I share an example in my book, and it really did happen, where my husband and I were observing our daughter dance. And she was about 2 or 3, and she was really getting into that thing, right? And the mind, my husband said, stop gyrating like that. And the mind goes there. And where does the mind go with fear? If you see a 2 or 3-year-old just dancing her little heart out. Oh, she's 15 and pregnant. You know, the mind goes all the way there. And what if she's 15 and pregnant? What's that going to say about you as a parent? So it's all up. What I didn't do as a parent, how I failed my child, I can't keep my child in check or in control, is all a reflection on self. So then we're faced with our fears, our failures, our shortcomings, what we got wrong, what we didn't get right, and it's not a good feeling. So then we overcompensate, over-parent, sometimes just based on what we think people are going to think about us.
And over-parenting and over-compensating ends up being stifling.
It is.
To
very
a child.
much so. Very much so.
So now you mentioned your husband, and I know you're happily married.
I might start blushing. Y'all talk about my boo thing.
And I'm sure that helps tremendously when raising 6 children.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
But talk to the parents out there that don't have the loving husband or the loving wife by their side, and they're doing this, you know, all alone, or you know, trying to do the best they can. What advice would you give to people like that that are maybe having trouble with raising their children or rearing their children as a single parent?
That's a hard place. That's a hard place. And I've been in a situation where God has allowed me to speak to the hearts of many single parents. That's not my experience, right? So I can't necessarily speak with a level of authority on how one goes about to do that. And I'm not even going to act like I like I can. I am the product of a single parent home myself. My mother raised me for the first maybe 10 or 12 years, and then some aunts, and then some, and then my dad, so I was kind of everywhere. But what I will say to that parent, number one, you're not mom and dad. I don't, one parent cannot be both.
Right.
When my father was raising me, he brought women into the community who could pour into me as a young lady.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't do both. And then it's problematic if one parent feels like they have to or can fulfill the role of both. So I would say to reach out to your broader community. If you're the mother, reach out to the strong men in the community, whether that's mentors, whether that's your uncle, you know, somewhere somebody can partner with you. Parenting is not a solo journey. So even though I've got my husband, I've got good girlfriends by my side who are like aunts to my children. They pour into my children. So it's not this, it truly is the village concept. So I would say for the single parents to tap in to that village, because we all need each other.
You know, I'm listening to you say that, and the first thing that comes to my mind, because I know quite a few single parents and mothers, particularly. One of the issues is trust. And when you dig deep enough or you talk about it, you realize that they have a hard time bringing men around the child, because there's a trust thing there, because there are many stories where coaches have violated children, and you know what I mean? Right. How much, but a lot of it is connected to whether it's direct trauma or indirect trauma. Because I don't need to have been molested to not trust people. My friends could have been molested, you know, or I might know people. So how much does unaddressed trauma affect how we parent, or affect just effective parenting in itself?
Absolutely directly. Okay. If I use myself as an example, I did not know that I had unresolved trauma from childhood until I became a parent. In my mind, I had dealt with some of this stuff, but it didn't manifest until I became a parent. Even then, it didn't shout and say, what happened to you when you were 6 is why you're yelling at your kid right now. Of course, it doesn't come to you like that. It comes to me in my quiet time when I'm going, why did I just go off like that? You know, literally, the kid just ran over my foot. Or, you know, whatever they dropped a plate and it broke. Whatever the infraction was this, and then my reaction was this. What is that? So that requires a lot of heart work, which is really the essence of the book, right? Getting into that heart to uncover that stuff so that the person can begin the process of healing. Because if not, we're parenting right out of all that hurt. It's the hurt talking. It's the trauma talking. And not you today, yourself that you think is present here and engaged with the child. It's yourself, that traumatic self, speaking, talking, and engaging with the child.
Your 6-year-old self in that moment trying to parent a 2-year-old. You know what that looks like?
A mess.
Right. Speaking of hard work, and I did want to read just a small passage that goes right into what you just said. You said, I was determined, you were working with one of your children, schoolwork. I was determined for him to sit still and trace all of these A's. He got up from the dining table and walked to a nearby coffee table. When I finished helping his sister, I went over to get him. I was irritated and was intent on putting him back in the seat to write those A's. But wouldn't you know it, on the back of his paper were a bunch of neat letter N's. In that moment, God asked me, are you trying to teach or trying to control? Going back to that hard work you just got finished talking about.
Yeah.
So you were like, you're gonna
do what I said, because that's how parents parent often, right? Yeah. You're gonna do what I say, when I say it, how I say it, because I said so.
Never mind that he just did a whole beautiful art display of ends.
Exactly. So it's like, what is our end goal? What are we actually trying to produce?
Right.
Good point.
So are we trying to raise adults who will be productive citizens, who will be balanced, who will be healthy, who will be whole in their minds, in their bodies, and in their spirits? Or are we trying to, again, manufacture and produce this perfect outcome who's going to do what I say, when I say, and how I say it. And that was a real example. Yes.
So how did that end? I'm just curious.
Oh, that ended with me recalibrating all of that experience, and I didn't do that again. It shifted my whole paradigm on how I feel about getting my children to produce what I said to produce when I said to do it. It was one of those life-altering moments.
So my question is now, you just mentioned, so now I'm thinking a lot of us, the way we parent is really, we're repeating patterns, we're repeating things that was passed down. We're using the tools that were given to us, right? So I have a wise son. He, well, I have the baby here, but I have a 7-year-old, and he is a wise child, okay, which can be irritating at times. But I appreciate it because it allows me to have conversations with him. But it doesn't always go as smooth as it sounds, okay? Now, I know there are times that I resort back to what I know because certain things you just don't ask why. It's like go in your room and have some quiet time. Why do I have to have quiet time? The thing that I want to resort to is because I said so, and I'm mama. What you mean, why? You know, right? And I'm thinking to them now, I would answer the question because right now I need quiet time, and the only way that I can have that is you take quiet time. Like I go through that with him. But what about parents who the only thing that they have to draw from, right, is the way they were parented, and maybe their parents' parenting style was toxic, but that's all they have to draw from. What are the alternatives for these parents? Where else can they go to draw, and does that take time?
Well, this forum you all have created right here is a start, right? Because somebody's watching today who our words are going to resonate with. And even if this is their first exposure, what will happen after watching today's broadcast is that in their very next interaction with their child, they will hear something, they will remember something, and it'll be an instant reminder. Now, in that moment, they're going to have a choice. When we were kids, there was this cartoon. On, and one would show an angel on one shoulder and a devil on one shoulder, right? And you get to choose, you know, am I going to be chill or am I going to go off, right? And so the same in our parenting scenarios. When something comes up, or in any scenario in life, when you have the trigger, you have the ability to make a choice. Now, for the parent who's just exposed to this, the default may be to some of the old behaviors. But every little teeny victory that we have to do something different, to interrupt the pattern, is an opportunity for us to move it in a different direction.
Beautiful stuff.
So there's an entry point for everybody, whether it's a forum like this, whether it's a book they read, whether it's a class they attend, whether it's observing another friend. I mean, I have a mommy muse. When I watch one of my girlfriends interact with her children, I'm just like, wow. That was so awesome. I have to use that. So she's my muse. So we all have someone in our lives who's shed a light, who is a light. In every dark place, there's always a light. So we just got to look for that light and then tap in. Ask.
I'm glad you mentioned interrupting patterns because I think that we don't realize how important that is even on a cellular level, right? Like because if you interrupt those and I'm a witness to that over the years, just my upbringing and what I've been exposed to when I was younger and who I am as an adult, I know what that looks like to interrupt patterns because after a while the brain, the body, everything cooperates and says, you know what? Oh, we don't do this anymore. This is what we do when we find ourselves in these situations. So can you just speak go a little bit more in depth when you talk about interrupting patterns? What does that mean?
Okay, so let's just break it down real simple because we could do a whole show on that alone, so we don't even have enough time. But it's just as simple as this. You and I are in an interaction. My old self says when I feel threatened, I'm going to come for you, right? So if Alqamar says something that I perceive as threatening, and this happens in a parent-child scenario, the child does something, maybe your authority feels threatened. Maybe when you were a child, somebody victimized you, and you're like, I'm not going to be a victim ever again. So even in your parent-child relationship, if your child does something and you feel like, oh no, I'm not going to be victimized, and then you go for the attack, there will be a fraction of a second. There's always a window of opportunity. And what I think happens, as I said before, when we have each win and it opens up the window, so the interrupt in the pattern is, okay, I feel threatened, the attack, I feel like the attack is coming, then here's the opportunity for me to respond differently. Am I going to respond in love, or am I going to react out of fear? And I feel like it's a window. There's this window of time. It's like a nanosecond, but all of us are given it. It might feel like an out-of-body experience for some. It might feel like a silent second. It might feel like a pause. It might feel like a breath. For me, what I know, you talked about the body and what the body does. If I feel my body rise, that's my cue to come to go back this way. Because I know once it go this way, I'm going to go all the way this way, right?
So you control the body doesn't control you.
Right. So my physical body for me is a trigger. If I feel my shoulders starting to come up because I carry tension in my shoulder.
Memory, yeah.
And I wear my shoulder. My girlfriend say, "You wearing your shoulders for earrings?" I mean, my shoulders when I get, tense. Yeah. So if I feel like the shoulders are rising, then that is an opportunity for me to say, okay, Tyra, calm down. And sometimes you just got to walk away.
Yeah.
So knowing what's going on in your physical body and then maximizing on that window. We all have that window to respond in love or react in fear.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing is all that's rooted in self-control.
Yes.
And that can be self-taught.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it takes time.
It does.
And it takes time.
It does.
For some, we have to reprogram.
Yeah.
Right? And it takes a great degree of self-control,
yeah,
which is something we're trying to teach our children.
Yeah.
So my one who's kind of like the class clown one, right? I'm always talking to him about his self-control. But then if I'm out of control and then I'm telling you, you need to have control, and then I'm out of control, then what am I modeling? What am I mirroring? Both of us can be out of control, because then we'll both be acting 8.
Yeah, what I think helps me is the breath. The breathe.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like take a second to breathe, because your mind is going a mile a minute as to what you're about to do. But when you take that breather, you're allowing your mind and your body to calm itself.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you can react better, I think.
And as we're talking, I'm thinking of just the term, and it's become a little bit cliche, knowledge of self. But when people talk about that, we think it's just connected to history, and it's not. It's deeper than that. It's biology. It's tuning in with self and how you function. Is facing your own trauma and knowing that, like you just mentioned, I know what this reaction is right now. I know what I'm feeling, and I know what I need to do to get myself in the best position to now handle this situation.
Right.
That's a part of knowledge
and
of self.
knowing that where it stems from.
Right.
Exactly. Could be a childhood scenario.
Exactly. So that just being in tune with yourself as a parent, because I know even for myself, I'm constantly assessing. I grade myself. Sometimes I'll be like, I got a straight F in parenting today, but we're going to bring that grade up tomorrow. Right. Sometimes I'll be working and bringing it up in the next hour because it's that serious, and I also learned the power of humanizing myself to my child.
Yes.
Because our children see us as gods.
Yes, they
we
do.
can do no wrong. They see the divinity in us, even if we don't see it in ourselves.
Yes.
I think of my baby just breastfeeding him alone. He's looking up at me like, when I'm hungry, this is who comes and feed me. When I need this poop out of it off of me, this is who comes.
Yes.
So you become like almost God. Yes. And I think humanizing ourselves, meaning not presenting yourself like you do no wrong. It's okay to allow our children to see us make mistakes, and that's where the power of apologizing comes in when you're wrong. I've learned that over the years.
But it sometimes takes time for us to get there.
It does.
Right?
It does.
Because parents can put on a lot of facades.
Yes.
And in an effort to think we're again protecting them and shielding them, right? So we don't give them opportunity to see our humanity, when it could be a great teachable moment. That yes, we have vulnerabilities. Yes, we hurt. Something had happened in my family, and I got the call, and I was in the middle of washing dishes. And so I dry my hand, I answer the phone, I get this call, hang up, I go back to washing the dishes. Everything in me wanted to weep, but my children were right there eating dinner. And I thought to myself, if I break right now, they're going to see me. If I break right now, they're going to see me. What am I going to say? I don't want them to see me broken. And then I had to say, well, why don't you want them to see you broken? It's okay if they see you cry. Invite them into this experience to say, Sometimes traumatic things happen, hurtful things happen. This is how we can work this through. This is what I'm feeling. What do you guys think about this? You know, in age-appropriate manners. So even me, I've had to work through getting over, you know, putting up this mask and this facade that everything is okay. I'm a machine. I can just operate this machine every day, because that's not true.
I have one more question. This is my last question, but how does a parent, because I find as a, I'm sorry, I constantly self-analyze. I'm just an analytical person, more so for myself. How does a parent deal with situations that may come up that you really don't care about, but you almost have, you feel the pressure to pretend that you care about it because you're a parent? I'm gonna give an example: making the bed. It's not that deep for me, okay? But as a parent, I almost feel like I have to make it a big deal. Like, you need to make your bed when you get up because that's what my mama did.
Right.
But I really don't care about it. If he goes and eats his breakfast before he makes his bed, it's not that big of a deal. But I almost find myself pretending that it's a big deal, right? And then you look over in my room and my bed ain't made yet, you know? So how does a parent deal with, and that's just one example. I'm sure we could think of many others that we really don't care that much about. Or maybe your child probably finally punched the bully in the mouth, and the bullies are bleeding. Now the school wants to suspend them, and you're happy.
And on the inside, you're going, yes,
you're happy.
Ain't show it.
But on the outside, you'd be like, you know, you shouldn't have done that. How do we rectify that? How do we
It's hard.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's not easy. So the first thing I would say in the example of the make the bed is, you know, it's okay for us to come with our baseline expectations for our family. Okay. You know, this is what we do in our house.
Yes.
What they do in their house, what my mama did, what the other people do, that is okay.
Okay.
Your child may want to dress a particular way.
Yep.
And you want to dress a particular way, and you want them to dress a particular way. Now, are you going to force, you know, your agenda on somebody, or are you going to give them license to be creative? My daughter wanted to shave the side of her head.
Yes, I have a story there too.
Everything in me was like, no. But all my reasons for no were mostly out of my own fear, out of my own control. I mean, there may have been one reason why, because I'm like, you know, when that grows back, it's going to look a hot mess. And are you going to be okay with that? And I really think she would have regretted it. So nonetheless, she didn't shave the side of the head. But she said to me the other day, well, I want to cut my eyebrow. My immediate instinct was, no, you're not cutting lines in your eye. We don't do, you know, again, I'm conservative. We don't do that. What do you want to cut like? This is stupid.
This is the artist?
You're going to no.
Okay.
Well, this is the pathology one.
Oh,
the
okay.
one with the animals.
Got you.
And she's a musician too. And
okay.
So she says, but I say, you know what? Go ahead, cut the eyebrow. Let me ask Daddy first, though. You know, because I got to get Dad's okay. Let me ask Daddy, but really, I was okay with her cutting the eyebrow. So she did cut the eyebrow.
Yeah.
So I'm learning to give too, and that it's okay, because really my only reasons for saying no would be probably based on what other people thought.
Yep.
And really, I don't have a problem with that. I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was one of my scenarios too, raising my son. When he was around 8, 9, 10 years old, around that age, he wanted locks in his hair. And I was dead set against it. No child of mine, you're going to have this haircut and your faded cut and all that. And so, and I would take him to the barber, and he would cry like a baby every time. But I was adamant that I was not going to let his hair grow. And looking back, I'm like, well, why not? What harm would it have been for him to have chosen for his head what he wanted to grow out of his own head? So it's those things, like I said, if I knew then what I know now, things would be so much different. But it was a control scenario. This, you know, I don't want to see your hair looking like that. So your hair not going to look like that. Forget about how he felt, you know, and the anguish and the turmoil that must have been going on with him inside, because he cried every time. So and then as soon as he was old enough to have his own, he grew his locks.
All right.
So that was one of those things that he never gave up on.
Wow.
So yeah.
sorry,
And
I'm
choice.
totally
We do need to present children with opportunities to make choices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We want to control
Yeah.
every little bit, every little factor.
Right.
And then even down to, parents still controlling what college
Yep.
kids go to,
Yep.
what major
Yeah.
they
Yep.
choose in college. And then you have the child, in their 30s, confused,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
abandoning everything because it was the parents' dream
Yep.
and not their own.
Yep.
So we need to be empowering our young people that they have a voice,
Yeah.
that they have a right, and that they should be trusted
Yeah.
And even
to make
when
good choices.
we do that too, even for extracurricular activities, there may be some things your child just don't want to do.
Yeah.
But we force them to do it anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I wanted to force one of mine into golf. I really did. Because, I've got 6 children, so that's going to be 6 college, tuitions, right? And so I'm like, okay, how can we pad this deck?
Yeah.
Like, you're going to be a golfer. Well, this one
Wow.
didn't like golf
Yeah.
at all.
Mm.
They gave it a go 1 time, 2 times, and I
Mhm.
said, am I going to keep signing you up for this?
Mm.
Am I going to torture you in this way?
Mm.
Or am I going to create opportunities for you to do that thing you've been showing me since you were 3?
Mm.
What are you going to do?
Good stuff.
I feel like a lot of the way we parent isn't necessarily inherited, just not always that. It's also our perception of children and what children are. And I think we see children other than something else than little human beings.
Right.
It's like
yeah.
children are in
Yeah.
a different category
Yeah.
altogether.
Oh, yeah.
And if we don't change that perception of children, we're not going to change how we are parenting them, because the idea that they're not little human beings with feelings,
Yeah.
Right.
right, and their own perception as the world as they grow,
Their
like
tastes and
yeah,
desires.
you mentioned the locks. He was what, 9 or 10?
About that age.
Right. You think about it. You're like, okay, prior to the time he reached 18, he would have done changed his mind. Think about how many times we've changed our mind. It's a
Right.
part of our evolution. It's a part of our journey. It's a part of our growth. So why is it that we don't apply that same thing to the way that we raise children? I think it boils down to the way we perceive children, our idea of what children are. They are
Right.
these things.
Yeah.
They're just this.
To shape and mold.
Yes. They have no brain.
Right.
No
Yeah.
rationality. Nothing. It's just
Yeah.
for us. Without us controlling them, we're
Right.
just gonna make a mess of everything
Right.
with our messed up selves.
Like there are our property and our possessions.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
often how children are
Absolutely.
raised, as if they're our property
Yeah.
and our possessions to do with as we see fit. But you know what happens? After age 5, you can't control anybody. Up 0 to 5, you might have an illusion.
Yeah.
An illusion of control, right? Then you begin to see 5 when, somebody starts making decisions, when somebody's personality is set, when you get into the kind of like 8-year-old where they have relationships outside of you, when you get to looking up at your child who's towering over you and you think you had some level of control, and now even the physical stature is the reminder that you don't have that level of control. We've got to relinquish this whole idea
We do need to.
of control, because we think we can control people and we cannot.
And I feel even as you look up and you realize you don't really have control, it makes parents try even harder to.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
you
yeah.
just
Yeah.
Girl, you need to relax. You
And
go
that's
to-
when a lot
you
of
go to hold too
rebel.
much.
Yes.
That's
Oh,
when
definitely.
a lot of the rebellion comes in, because
Yeah,
they
I
try
mean-
to exercise their own way,
Right.
and you're trying to clamp down.
Parenting
Right.
and adolescent is a whole program for itself.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
That's
Yes,
real.
it is.
Because that's a whole different human being.
And we try to control everything they do.
Yeah.
The way they speak,
Yeah.
the way they wear their hair,
Yeah.
the types of clothes they wear, the food they eat, the
Wow.
schools they're going to go to, the friends they have. We're trying to control everything.
Mm.
We're trying to manufacture this end product, and it takes away from them living their own experience. At the end of the day, all I pour into these 6 people, they're going to go on and live their own experience.
you.
I mean, they will have spent a fifth of their life, roughly, under my tutelage,
a good
under
point.
my instruction. But the other 4/5 of their life, they're not even going to be with me.
That's an
They're going to be
excellent point.
living their own experience. Well, I have given them room to really do that.
Most people say we try to create a mini us or replicate ourselves in our children. I disagree with that. I think what we're trying to replicate is a version of ourselves that we never got to live.
Yes.
Period.
That's good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's meaty right there. Somebody need to write that down.
Well, I think we have run out of time.
Yeah, this is so
we
good.
have been talking with Tyra Lane-Kingsland. Where can they find this awesome book, Purposeful Parenting?
Awesome. So this book is available, guys, on Amazon. For those local here in the DMV, this book can be purchased at Barnes & Noble. This book in the DMV can also be purchased at the First Baptist Church of Glenarden's bookstore, also at Living Well ABC store in Silver Spring for those in the DMV. For those outside of the DMV, you can get your copies on Amazon. Both print book and Kindle.
And I highly recommend it, family.
Oh, Kindle?
Yes.
Cool. Okay.
Definitely get your copy of this book. It was a really fun read. It was a fun read and quality information. Thank you so much, Tyra.
Thank you, ladies.
So much
a
for
pleasure
joining
being
us.
with mom friends.
Yeah.
It's always good and encouraging and uplifting to be in the company of moms, because here we can just share our experience, tell a real deal, know we in this thing together, and keep trucking one step at a time.
That's real. All right, family. Well, until next time, take care of each other out there. Peace and love.
Peace.